The day my entitled stepsister crashed my wedding, chaos unfolded like a storm tearing through a calm sea. Picture this, the ceremony had just wrapped up, and the air buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses as we prepared to dive into lunch. That's when she barged in, Amanda, all 26 years of her dramatic flair, dragging along a child I'd never seen before. Her entrance felt less like an uninvited guest arriving and more like a hurricane ripping open the doors. She strode straight toward me, her heels clicking against the floor like gunshots in the sudden hush that fell over the room. My husband stood beside me, his hand instinctively tightening on mine as if bracing for impact. Before anyone could intervene, Amanda unleashed her fury, a verbal barrage accusing me of stealing her dream wedding. "You think you're so special now?" she spat, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Even Dad likes you better." The accusation hung heavy in the air, drawing stares from every corner of the venue. But Amanda wasn't done yet. Oh no, she saved her piece de resistance for last. With venom dripping from her words, she shoved the bewildered kid forward and dropped a bombshell. "This is your son," she declared, pointing at the boy. "The one you gave away years ago." Gasps rippled through the crowd like waves crashing against rocks. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. My heart pounded in my chest, but clarity quickly returned. I knew it was nonsense. How could anyone believe such a wild fabrication? My parents sprang into action, stepping between us like shields deflecting arrows. They told Amanda to leave immediately or face legal consequences. Cornered and seething, she retaliated with one final jab, claiming she'd only revealed the truth out of spite. As they escorted her out, the tension began to ease, though whispers lingered among the guests like smoke after a firework display. It took some effort, but my husband and I managed to reassure everyone that Amanda's claims were baseless, a desperate attempt to tarnish my happiness. Later, back home, we gathered with both sets of parents to piece together the backstory behind Amanda's meltdown. What emerged painted a picture of entitlement spiraling out of control. Years earlier, she'd planned an extravagant wedding, demanding our parents foot the bill for what sounded like a royal gala. But there was a catch. Her father refused, citing both financial imprudence and doubts about the relationship itself. After all, she'd barely known her fiancé for a year. When my mother declined to dip into funds earmarked for my future, Amanda's dreams dissolved faster than sugar in hot tea. Fast forward to my own engagement, and things couldn't have been more different. My partner and I envisioned a modest affair, prioritizing savings for the life ahead rather than fleeting pomp. Our decision resonated with our parents, who generously contributed without hesitation. Yet, when Amanda stumbled upon my heartfelt Facebook post thanking them, something inside her snapped. To her, it must have felt like salt rubbed into old wounds, their support for me serving as a glaring reminder of their refusal to indulge her fantasies. The fallout didn't end there. The next morning, my phone rang with news that Amanda had landed herself in even deeper trouble. In her quest for revenge, she'd impulsively snatched her neighbor's child, a reckless act now labeled kidnapping. Suddenly, her vendetta seemed less like jealousy and more like self-destruction. Calls poured in from her friends, blaming me for her predicament. According to them, I was the villain of the story, the favored child basking in golden privilege while Amanda suffered. Yet, nothing could be further from the truth. Growing up, neither of us wore a crown bestowed by our parents. We attended the same schools, pursued opportunities equally available to both. If anything separated us, it was effort, mine earning scholarships, hers expecting handouts. Even now, my stepfather made it abundantly clear, they would have gladly funded her wedding if she'd shown an ounce of reasonableness. Instead, she dug in her heels, insisting on perfection paid for entirely by others. So here we are, left to wonder, where does bitterness end and accountability begin? Amanda's choices painted her as the architect of her own downfall, yet somehow, she framed herself as the victim. And maybe that's the saddest twist of all, not the scene she caused at my wedding, but the way she clung to resentment instead of seeking redemption. Being forgiven, or free of consequences. The weight of her actions hung over her like a storm cloud, dark and unrelenting. Her friends continued to rally around her, painting her as some tragic heroine betrayed by fate and family. But the truth was far less poetic. She had dug this hole herself, one reckless decision at a time. And yet, guilt gnawed at me, sharp and insistent, like a splinter buried deep beneath my skin. Was it wrong to feel relief that I wasn't the one standing in her shoes? Or gratitude that my choices hadn't led me down such a self-destructive path? The days blurred together, each one heavy with tension. My husband reminded me often that I had nothing to apologize for, his voice steady and sure, but doubt still lingered in the corners of my mind. It wasn't until I spoke with my mother and stepdad again that clarity began to creep back in. Their words were firm yet gentle, like sunlight breaking through a fog. They reassured me that Amanda's behavior wasn't my burden to carry, that her choices reflected only on herself. Still, it stung to hear whispers from people we'd once called friends, accusations laced with venom disguised as concern. "Why didn't you share your funds?" they asked, as if generosity could have fixed her chaos. "Didn't you know how much she needed them?" But did she really need them, or simply want them? That question echoed in my thoughts, refusing to fade. Growing up, Amanda had always been quick to demand but slow to appreciate. She treated kindness like an entitlement rather than a gift, and when those demands went unmet, resentment festered. Our childhood home became a battleground where insults flew like arrows, both of us armed with barbs meant to wound. Yet somehow, I emerged determined to forge my own path, while she remained tethered to expectations she refused to meet. Independence wasn't something she sought. Instead, she clung to dependency like a lifeline, borrowing money month after month without ever addressing the root of her struggles. Her career stagnated not because opportunities eluded her, but because effort did. She lived beyond her means, unwilling to adapt or sacrifice, and expected others to fill the gaps. When our parents declined to fund her extravagant vision of perfection, she saw betrayal instead of boundaries. To her, their refusal wasn't about financial prudence, it was personal. Never mind that they supported her in countless other ways, offering help even now as she faced legal trouble. Never mind that my stepdad scrambled to gather nearly $25,000 to settle matters with the child's mother, draining resources and energy to shield her from further fallout. In her eyes, none of it mattered unless it came wrapped in grand gestures and unconditional compliance. And so, here we stood, two sisters shaped by the same circumstances, yet worlds apart in outlook and outcome. While I built a life rooted in hard work and humility, Amanda chased fantasies built on borrowed dreams. People accused me of being the favored child, but what did that title even mean? Favoritism implies preference without merit, yet everything I achieved came from sweat, determination, and late nights spent studying under dim lights. If anything, Amanda squandered chances handed to her on silver platters, choosing comfort over growth, instant gratification over long-term gain. Why should I bear the blame for her inability to rise above? Still, the accusations lingered, souring relationships and stirring old wounds. Friends turned foes painted me as the villain, twisting facts to fit their narrative. But no amount of slander could erase the truth. I earned what I had, fought for it tooth and nail, and never expected anyone else to pave my way. Amanda's plight wasn't punishment for my success, it was the natural consequence of her own decisions. Even now, as my stepdad worked tirelessly to mend the mess she'd made, she clung to victimhood, casting herself as the injured party in a story where she wore the villain's mask. In the end, perhaps the saddest part wasn't her mistakes, it was her refusal to learn from them. Settlement reached, charges dropped, freedom restored, yet no lesson learned. As the dust settled and life returned to its rhythm, I found solace in knowing I hadn't contributed to her downfall. Guilt may have shadowed me briefly, but it couldn't take root in soil watered by honesty and integrity. Amanda's journey was hers alone, fraught with missteps and missed chances. Mine stretched ahead, paved with purpose and pride. And though the echoes of her drama would ripple outward for weeks, months, maybe years, I chose to focus on the horizon, not the storm behind me. Gratitude seemed like a foreign concept to her, as distant as the stars in a pitch-black sky. My mother confided in me that Amanda hadn't even bothered to thank my stepdad, not a word of acknowledgement for his efforts or sacrifices. Instead, fury burned in her voice when she recounted the conversation, each syllable laced with venom. Days had passed since the ordeal, yet Amanda remained silent, her pride apparently too heavy to carry even basic decency. I'd always known she was self-centered, but this? This was a new low, one that scraped against the very bottom of human decency. My mother revealed how my stepdad masked his pain behind stoic silence, refusing to let it show, though she could see the cracks forming beneath his calm exterior. In 2 days, my husband and I are set to leave for our honeymoon, a much-needed escape after the chaos of recent events. But before we depart, we've decided to visit my family one last time, if only to check on my stepdad. He's a man who deserves better than the storm Amanda has unleashed upon him, a quiet hero who raised me alongside his own daughter without complaint. If there's any justice in this tangled mess, perhaps I can be the child who brings him peace instead of heartache. At least there's some solace. Amanda's friends have finally stopped their relentless whining about parental favoritism. They claim my parents always preferred me over her, spinning tales they must have known were hollow. The posts have vanished now, leaving no trace of their accusations, but the memory lingers, an itch I wish I'd scratched by speaking up sooner. Yet, deep down, I know this isn't the end. Amanda will resurface eventually, armed with fresh grievances and a chorus of supporters eager to amplify her outrage. When that day comes, I won't stay silent again. This time, I chose restraint because the joy of marriage still shimmered around us, fragile and new, and I didn't want to tarnish it with bitterness. Besides, picking apart her flaws while she stumbled felt wrong, especially with my parents consumed by worry for her future. Still, if she dares to cross the line again, if she tries to twist truths or drag my name through the mud, I'll stand firm. And judging by the weary look in my parents' eyes, they won't stop me either. Justice may not strike immediately, but it always arrives in its own time. Update 3. It's been nearly a month since the wedding fiasco, and my husband and I just returned from our honeymoon. A blissful reprieve shattered the moment we stepped back into reality. Within hours, news hit like a thunderclap: Amanda is gone. Not physically, of course, but emotionally severed from the family tree. She made a public declaration on social media, proclaiming her decision to cut ties with everyone, parents, siblings, all of us. Her words dripped with melodrama, as if she were auditioning for a soap opera rather than addressing real lives. I missed the announcement entirely. My phone stayed tucked away during our travels, ignored unless absolutely necessary. Whatever she posted wasn't urgent enough to reach me then, and honestly, knowing Amanda, it probably wasn't worth the attention anyway. So here I am, blindsided once more, left to piece together fragments of her latest tantrum.